The Epstein Files. You know what? Some stories don't just belong to the past. They sit in sealed folders, in hard drives, in court archives, waiting for the day the world is finally forced to look. Today, Truth Frame steps out of history only and into living history. The ongoing, uncomfortable saga of Jeffrey Epstein, the private island he controlled, and the powerful names now resurfacing in the newly released Epstein Files. This is not a trial. This is not a verdict. This is a historical record in motion, with allegations, denials, and unanswered questions that will shape how we think about power, justice, and exploitation for years to come. Who was Jeffrey Epstein? Jeffrey Epstein was born in 1953 in Brooklyn, New York, into a middle-class family. He attended Lafayette High School and later took classes at Cooper Union and New York University, but never completed a college degree. Despite that, he began teaching math and physics at the elite Dalton School in Manhattan in the 1970s, an early sign of how he would move inside privileged circles without traditional credentials. From teaching, Epstein shifted into finance. He joined the investment bank Bear Stearns, then left to start his own financial management firm. Over time, he cultivated an image as a mysterious billionaire who only handled the money of ultra-wealthy clients. His exact net worth was never transparent, but his assets included a Manhattan mansion, a ranch in New Mexico, properties in Paris and Florida, and a private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. In 2008, Epstein's public image cracked. He pleaded guilty in Florida to charges of soliciting prostitution from a minor and received a controversial plea deal that many later described as shockingly lenient. He served a relatively short sentence with extensive work release privileges. That deal, and the power structures behind it, would become a central question in later investigations. In 2019, federal prosecutors in New York charged Epstein with sex trafficking of minors. A month later, he was found dead in his jail cell. The death was ruled a suicide. His death ended his personal trial, but it did not end the story. Instead, it shifted attention to his network, his properties, and the people who had moved through his world. The island he ran, Little St. James. Just southeast of St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands lies a small, beautiful island, Little St. James. Epstein bought it in 1998 through a company called LSJ LLC for about $7.95 million. Over time, it became his primary residence and the most infamous symbol of his life. Locals had a nickname for it, Pedophile Island. The island is only about 70 to 78 acres, a tiny dot in the Caribbean, but it was heavily developed. A main villa, guest houses, a pool, cabanas, a private dock, and later, upgraded power and fiber optic connections laid under the sea. It was designed to be self-contained, luxurious, and above all, private. According to a complaint by the Attorney General of the U.S. Virgin Islands, Little St. James functioned as a perfect hideaway and haven for trafficking young women and underage girls for sexual abuse. Survivors have described being flown in, isolated, and controlled, with limited ability to leave. The island appears repeatedly in civil suits, criminal filings, and survivor testimony as a central hub of Epstein's alleged trafficking operation. Recent releases from the so-called Epstein Files, including photos and video from the island, show interiors of bedrooms, bathrooms, and even what appears to be a dentist's chair, along with a chalkboard bearing words like power, deception, and political. There are also images of phones with partially redacted speed dial names, hinting at networks that extended far beyond the shoreline. In 2023, after Epstein's death and the legal battles over his estate, Little St. James was sold to a wealthy investor, with plans to convert it into a luxury resort. But for many, the island will never be just a resort location. It is a physical monument to the collision of wealth, secrecy, and abuse. The Epstein Files and the VIP question. Here is where the story moves from one man to a network. Over the years, Epstein cultivated relationships with politicians, business leaders, scientists, celebrities, and royalty. Flight logs, visitor lists, photographs, and emails show that many high-profile figures crossed his path, sometimes socially, sometimes professionally. The recent release of millions of pages of documents, videos, and images, often referred to as the Epstein Files, has intensified public scrutiny of these connections. It is crucial to draw a clear line here. Being named in documents, appearing in logs, or being photographed with Epstein does not automatically mean criminal involvement. Many of the individuals mentioned have denied any knowledge of or participation in abuse, and as of now, most have not been charged with crimes related to Epstein. The files and related reporting mention political figures from the United States and other countries, business leaders from Wall Street and Silicon Valley, members of royal families, entertainment and media personalities. Some names, such as a former U.S. president, a former British royal, and other prominent public figures, have been widely reported in the media as having social or business ties to Epstein. Again, the spectrum ranges from brief social contact to repeated meetings, flights, or stays at his properties. Many of these individuals insist their interactions were limited, innocent, or purely professional. The newly released files include videos from Little St. James, including footage of Epstein inside his island home, thousands of images from his properties, emails and documents referencing public figures, news articles, and political gossip. Tip-line summaries, where members of the public reported alleged information about high-profile individuals, many of which law enforcement quickly deemed not credible. So what do these files actually do? They map the proximity of power, who was in Epstein's orbit, who met him, who flew with him, who stayed on his island or visited his homes. They raise questions about why such a man was so deeply embedded in elite networks, even after his 2008 conviction. But they do not, on their own, prove guilt for every name that AP pairs. That distinction matters, for justice, for truth, and for anyone who might one day be named in a file simply by association. How this may affect the world. The Epstein story is not just about one predator. It is about systems. First, it exposes how wealth and influence can bend the justice system. Epstein's 2008 plea deal, negotiated largely out of public view, has become a case study in how powerful defendants can secure outcomes that ordinary people almost never receive. Second, it forces us to confront the vulnerability of children and young women in a globalized world of private jets, offshore islands, and financial secrecy. The U.S. Virgin Islands, often seen as a tax haven, became, according to legal filings, a haven for exploitation as well. Third, it challenges public trust in elites. When citizens see the same names in politics, finance, and royalty appearing in documents tied to a convicted sex offender, even if only socially, it deepens suspicion that there is one set of rules for the powerful and another for everyone else. The Epstein Files, with their millions of pages, will likely fuel debates about transparency, accountability, and the need for stronger safeguards around vulnerable people. Finally, it reminds us that history is not just what happened long ago. History is being written now, in courtrooms, in congressional committees, in survivor testimonies, and in the way we choose to remember or forget. Truth Frame's Lens. At Truth Frame, we usually look backward, at wars, migrations, forgotten communities, erased voices. But the Epstein story is a bridge between past patterns and present power. The pattern of powerful men shielded from consequences. The pattern of victims disbelieved, silenced, or bought off. The pattern of private spaces, plantations, estates, islands, used to hide what cannot survive in the light. Little St. James may one day be marketed as a luxury resort. But for the survivors, and for anyone paying attention, it will always be a reminder that paradise can be weaponized. The Epstein Files will continue to be analyzed, debated, and contested. Names will be defended, reputations will be fought over, and new details may still emerge. Our task is not to rush to conspiracy or to blind trust, but to insist on truth with evidence and compassion for those who were harmed. This has been Truth Frame. If you want us to continue exploring living history, where power, memory, and justice collide, tell us in the comments which story you believe the world is still afraid to face.